welcome everyone to our podcast. We are the Patriot Pod, otherwise known as the Patriot Podcast. We are retired Army officers. I retired after 18 years in the active duty Army. Amber retired. Hi, Amber.
Hi.
She's about to retire after 20 years as a commissioned Army officer. She's a logistician. And we wanted to start this podcast because real estate is what we wanted to move into. Our active duty and our military careers were coming to an end. So we knew we wanted to jump into a bit of a real estate as something to keep us busy after our military careers. And what better way to keep Amber and I on the same page about something, because in the military, we can talk the same language, but I can't talk logistics the same way she can't talk field artillery, but we can talk real estate together as we're building something. And I'm really excited about today's podcast. I'm going to bring on Tommy Lee Ray, who is an absolute stellar mentor, and we're going to get this started. So that's a little bit about myself. I'm going to pass it over to Amber. Amber, tell us about you.
Yeah, so excited that this is our first inaugural podcast. We have no idea what we're doing, but hopefully we'll learn as we go, right? We're going to be real. We're going to probably make some mistakes, and that's okay. Just a little bit about us and why we're doing this is, as we're getting ready to leave the Army, really probably about 5 years ago, we started looking at what we're going to do next. And we knew after spending, 20 plus years in the Army, our entire adult lives going through some shit, we did not want to go back to work for anybody. So we started seeking out mentorship. We started talking to the right people and trying to figure out what's next for us. What can we do that's actually together, like Steven talked about? Something that we can build together as a family, bring our girls into, and just get involved. And we really thought that real estate, if you look at the trajectory of what real estate has done over time, it's probably the safest thing that you can invest into over a longer period of time, because the market goes up and down, but over a course of time, it's always up, right, if you look at it. So we knew that we wanted to start getting ourselves educated around the right people. And getting out of the Army, we knew we wanted to start something where we could also give back to our fellow veterans. So that's what we're doing here. We wanted to give back. We want to start learning more. We want to bring on some good people and learn as we go, and also introduce you all out there to some good people and some good concepts, so that as you're looking to transition out of the military, you can start putting yourself to work while you're still active duty. A lot of people don't start their journey until they're out. But there are so many things you can do in the real estate landscape to prepare yourself and propel yourself once you get out. So having said that, we're going to introduce Tommy Ray. And the reason that we're bringing him on is because he is an absolutely very accomplished real estate investor. He uses multiple strategies to create cash flow, equity, favorable tax treatment, while building that wealth and creating jobs while he's doing it, right? So he's a Texas Real Estate Commission approved to be able to teach real estate investments. And he's also held a brokerage license. So he's been a real estate agent and a broker. He's also a trained loan officer, trained tax preparer. And most importantly, what really brought us to him is that he's a retired military officer as well. So he served in the Air Force as both Airman Basic all the way to Master Sergeant, and then got commissioned as a second lieutenant and retired after over 20 years as a major. So we got connected to him here in San Antonio, Military City, USA, and we wanted to bring him on because his investment portfolio is across multiple locations. He's been investing since 1990 all the way to present. He manages profitable real estate investment portfolios in 5 different states. He has over 100 units. He's bought and rehabbed over 100 homes and condos, just a wealth of knowledge. And we've just been, we're grateful that we got connected to him. And he agreed to, come on this show with us as we learn from everything that we're doing, and help to teach us and help to teach all of you out there. So with that, I'll give it back to you, babe, to see how we're going to do this thing with Tommy here.
Yeah, and I had a question for you, Tommy. I think most importantly, before we get started in the meat and potatoes and start grilling you with questions, what are you sipping on over there?
Dun, dun, dun. Shiner Tex. Is that Texex? Texex?
Yeah, Texhex, like hex.
Wicked Haze. It's called Wicked Haze.
Wicked Haze. Shout out to Shinerbach.
to
What are
the
you
fall.
drinking over there, Ben?
I have Convict Hill oatmeal stout. I am a stout person, and I found this new stout here in Texas since I've been here. Loving it.
Beautiful.
Love
Well, that's
Shiner.
awesome.
Love Shiner.
Yes, Shiner Bach. Absolute shout out to them. Amazing folks. Hoping that if they hear this one day, that they'll be able to sponsor this website, or I'm sorry, this podcast.
I like it. Well played.
Shout out. Let's get the plugs going, right? So,
Absolutely.
Tommy, now that we've gotten the introductions out of the way, now that we can really get down to the brass tacks of it, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of share your background, the way that you see it, and really why real estate investing as an ex-military individual, or perhaps for those individuals that are still in the military, like why did you choose real estate?
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky in the 70s, and my mom was a hairdresser, so she worked with her hands, and she was very tired at the end of the day.
Yeah,
My stepdad was a CPA, he worked with his mind and a little bit with his hands, and I could see how much standing on your feet all day exhausted my mom. And one day, the zoning commissioner's wife was in the chair. My mom knew how to ask the right questions, and she found out
oh, wow.
about this thing called Jefferson Mall that was going to be built. And she came home super excited and threw us in the back of the car. And every weekend for 6 months, we drove down this road called Outer Loop in Louisville, Kentucky. And eventually, over 6 months, the mall started breaking ground, and my mom knew. Nah. So when she did that, she wound up basically buying a 2-1 house for like $27,000, and a handful of years later, she did a 1031 exchange and made $275 out of a $27,000 investment. And when you're making that kind of money in the 70s, early 80s, that's an eye-opening moment. Because when I joined the military in 85, 86, my first full tax return, I remember paying, it was $7,835 is what I made that year, as compared to how much my mom made. And my mom was initially a hairdresser, but she was also an agent later. So and my dad was a stockbroker. He invested a lot. He was a CPA, but he made me read books on stocks, on real estate. And before there was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I was living that practical exercise.
That's amazing. I love that. All the way from the very beginning. You have essentially had that kind of, it's the talk about nature versus nurture, and your nurture, which ultimately would become your nature, was learning from your parents at a very young age. I think that's very important.
You could
It's a
either, my
huge
dad
deal.
would say you could work with your back or you could work with your mind. But having been a military enlisted guy, a military officer, people only respect those that can work with their back and their mind from the front. And when you
Absolutely.
master all of it, then you have a very flat command and control loop like Rommel, circa 1942 in the desert. And that's what you want to
Yep.
make, is you want to make very robust leaders that can make decisions because they can measure the intrinsic value of the asset, this moment in time, and figure out how best to play the moment to realize the highest and best value in that asset in that moment, and harvest all the training you can for you and your team. Because you need
Absolutely.
synergy, you need economic momentum to gain confidence in your command judgment.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you started off learning those values and learning those lessons from your parents, and then you joined the Air Force. So you did a very robust and storied career in the Air Force, and then following that, you decided. Were you investing in real estate while you were active duty Air Force, or did you start investing afterwards?
I joined 30 October 85. I bought my first house in 89. I bought my first duplex with my VA loan in 91. So I was
Wow.
doing, and the tax preparer training was in 91. It's like let's go and learn to invest. So you have to read the rules to Monopoly. That's why you take the tax preparer course. And then you go invest, because you want to realize all your gains, your income, the offense.
Yep.
But the tax return H&R Block was about teaching you the defense. So it's the shield defense versus the income, the offense. And you have to have both to have a balanced strategy.
That's really smart, and I totally agree with that. In my limited experience with real estate investing, we have been successful so far, but you're absolutely right. The best offense is sometimes in some situations the best defense, or having a robust defense. But so did you in the military, like at the Air Force and from our backgrounds in the Army, there are chains of command, and there are, squad leaders. There's leaders everywhere. In the Air Force, did you have a particular person that you were leaning on, or perhaps influencing you to continue on the path of what you already kind of knew you wanted to do, which was real estate investing? Did you have somebody that was constantly pushing you?
Nope. No, it was me driven. Back then, the military tended to look the other way if you wanted to have another job. And we tended to curb the folks, especially when you go through basic training, you go through your IQT or your initial tech training, and then you get basically MR mission ready certified. They really want you to look at the world through a straw, and that's the mission, and getting up to speed. And the military is really good with the Pareto principle. Do you all know what the Pareto principle is? Pareto principle is basically 80% is done by 20%, and 20% do about 80% of sitting around. So the military is really good at over leveraging the strong horses. And what happens is you can get over leveraged and taken into the straw, or you can say, hey, I'm going to do these things. I want to be a generalist because I want to be a general in my investing. And when you have to get a dossier of skill sets, you have to push for outside the box thinking, outside the box training. You can go through the NCO academies, you can go through SOS, you can go through your command staff courses, but it's about tactics, strategy, operational art, and the history of the military and that kind of stuff. It's not about investing. And we know in the military, you don't want to attack when they're weak. Well, it's the same thing in investing. We want to invest and attack when the market has lost its confidence. And we want to build a capabilities-based team to go in, to see the moment, to do a full SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We want to have a balanced team that could take a project from front to back. The worst thing you can do as an investor is find an asset and then build your team back asswards. What you want to do is you want to see the pond, the area. Like San Antonio right now, you guys are investing in San Antonio. So you want to see the pond, and then you want to build your team, an agent, a lender, or a team of lenders, because some are going to be selling you sort of Fannie Mae backed mortgages, and some are going to be local banks that's going to give you a lot more elasticity in what y'all are trying to do. And then you want to have the right inspectors, you want to have the right trades guys to fix it at a reasonable level to its desired end state. A rental versus a retail rehab. And an Airbnb is more like a retail rehab. You want to have everybody you need, from the landscapers to the handyman, before you need them. You get more efficiencies when you shop in advance. When you're calling for the plumber on Sunday right now, you're going to be paying the top price. If he sees you as a transaction, top price. If he sees you as a string of business and you're bringing him business all the time, different price, different relationship. And the key word there was relationship.
Absolutely.
Leadership's about relationships, investing's about relationships, and understanding the market amongst all those people I just listed, the agents, the lenders, city leadership, your trades guys. The more you're sincere and the more you're excavating for what you want to know and what you don't want to know, the better your SWOT analysis and the better your game plan and the better the glue between team members. You have to invest in the truth, and you have to address problems squarely. And the problem is often yourself, your tradespeople. Any human is a weak link unless we're constantly sort of checking on each other and holding each other to the fire to some degree.
Absolutely. So before I kind of take a step back and ask you a little bit more about the SWOT analysis, like you were just mentioning, I want to ask if Amber has any questions. I know she's probably got a few.
Yeah, I did have a question. Just going back to, you mentioned that you bought your first property, shortly after you joined the Air Force. As I'm assuming you were pretty young then, and you were a go-getter, right? As many of us are in the military, looking to do something more. And you saw the opportunity in real estate, but a lot of young soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors are afraid to take that leap, especially as young people. So what advice would you give them? Like what do you think they should look for if they're afraid to jump into the real estate game? And you bought a duplex, right? A lot of people are
Well,
afraid
I
to
bought
do
my
something like
grandmother's
that.
house at 6841 Shrewsbury Road because, grandmother needed to get rid of that 3 bedroom, 1 bath, functionally obsolete house. And she had done me a favor when my dad got killed when I was a very young kid. My dad had left his insurance money to my grandparents. And my grandparents chopped it in half and gave money to my mom to buy a house to raise us in, and chopped the other half into halves and set it aside in a trust account administered by my Uncle Hobart. But they gave to me. So when my grandpa was dead, grandmother said she needed to sell her house. I gave grandma what she wanted for her house. There's no negotiating with grandma, you know. So, but going back to your question, I'll use my career and your career, in Hawaii as an example. There's certain areas that just don't make sense economically because the cap rate, the rate at which something pays itself off, capitalization rate. Hawaii doesn't make sense. When I was in California in 99 to 03, it did make sense. It wasn't going to pay for itself. I have a credo. If I'm going to buy something, I want it free. And when I say free, I mean because of deal structure and highest and best use analysis and the way I work my relationships with banks or motivated sellers, I want to make money off problem solving. And it can be done. I did it. So my words to you to convey to those soldiers, sailor, airmen, space airmen, I don't even know what we're calling them now, space guardians, is to um, wherever you're at, study it, do the SWOT analysis of it. It may not be the time to buy in that market unless you just sniper a sweet deal from a motivated seller. But you may always be able, because real estate is inherently a team sport, you may always be able to add value to the down market. And you'd be amazed in the red states that have very landlord friendly laws, you can still find deals if you strategically pair with wholesalers, if you know how to take an asset to its highest and best use with Airbnbs, or just piddle around in wholesale deals to learn them, or room for rent kind of deals, or a hybrid even of those. There's ways to solve the problem and offer something of value as part of a team, even if you're not in that physical geographic area.
Yep.
So I would say understand your area, understand its strengths, its weaknesses, and understand where you're at in your development. There was something I was thinking about knowing that we're going to have this podcast, and I asked Stephen the question. I said, what do you think is more important, Stephen, learning or earning? And Stephen
Yep.
jumped on it. He goes, learning. And I can tell you, having walked into my first really serious, I've been in fistfights, but a really first serious, like you're trying to maim the other guy fist fight. I got in a fist fight with a guy off a bus, and the guy eventually wound up in the NFL. And I approached the fight like I'm just trying to hit you in the head, knock you out, that kind of stuff. The guy put his first 5 punches in my nutsack. And when you wind up with planet Earth and the moon and the fever that goes with that, you wind up that sometimes you have a paradigm that doesn't match reality. You think
Yeah.
there's a courtesy in a fist fight that are not there. So
Yes.
I have learned that before I was rolling around the pavement in a Hardee's park. I would rather learn before I get in a F-22 and try to go up there and dogfight somebody what's cool and what's not. I'd rather learn in a simulator before I go out there and exhaust limited emotional, cash, credit, and negative. I'll call it negative G's. I don't want to pull negative G's and get my aircraft torn out from underneath me. So learning to me is a
Exactly.
big deal. So why is it a team sport? We can share learning like we're doing it right now. We're sharing learning. And
Exactly.
I think if we approach our military duty as sort of sculpting people early versus at the very end of your all's career saying, let's do real estate. Hell no. Let's do real estate the whole time, or build those skill sets to do real estate the whole time. Let's fully mobilize our VA loan the whole time. let's do these things, and let's look at our PMEs and professional military educations, and let's focus when we're there on harvesting, also understanding those skill sets that have a civilian, consumer, commercial value, and double down on those skill sets. Because I found that when the military is done with you, they're done with you. So you
Yes.
have to build those skill sets, knowing that you have to invest in you and you have to understand your value. Nobody's going to be there putting their value in your pocket.
Exactly.
Tracking
So,
that.
so going back to what we were talking about earlier, for those that don't know, I am a very systems person, and I do a lot of targeting analysis. I do a lot of working groups for the military, which I don't anymore. But when we go back to the when you get into the military landscape and you are familiar with military terms, you realize that we deal with a lot of acronyms. And to address what SWOT is, it's a simple analysis that helps you to figure out if something is beneficial or if something is harmful. And
Juice with the squeeze.
you go through the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Now we do that in a multitude of different ways. I do D3A, which is detect, decide, deliver, and assess. I'm sure that Tommy, you did some different things assessment wise in the Air Force as a JTAC. But I wanted to also throw it out there. I love the discussion so far, but I wanted to, like, if I'm putting my shoes, or if I'm putting on a pair of shoes as if I were an E3 in the Army, and I'm looking at this podcast and I'm going like, this is just way over my head. What are some of the misconceptions that you could possibly address? Because as an E3, you're not making a whole lot of money. As a young airman, you're not making a whole lot of money, but you did touch on a very key aspect, which is the VA home loan. Like, that's something that a lot of people are always briefed about in the military, but that, among what other avenues of approach, we'll call them, do young soldiers have to get in the real estate market and build a career? Like year 3, I think that young soldiers, airmen, Marines, whoever, can start to build a real estate portfolio for themselves without a lot of money coming out of their monthly paychecks. You're talking about, I love the conversation when it goes around assets that pay for themselves. Touching on what you said earlier, I want assets that are free. You're absolutely right. There's different tax strategies that you can utilize to get to that end state. But from your experience, because you've had just an eternity's worth of experience more than we have, can you perhaps, from the lens of a young airman, help them to understand what are the misconceptions? Because real estate is a big thing. Real estate costs money. You're talking tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You're painting a picture of a wall that's not there. And
Exactly.
you're throwing up the paradigm. And when you're throwing up the paradigm, well, one, I want to throw something out. Right now, there's never been a greater social gap in our values than this oldest generation to this newest generation. These people live in their phone, and these people are living in nursing homes. And they don't have connectivity to these people. And these people want to be revalidated. They want to be engaged. They want to be relevant. My mom at 75, my stepdad at 84 is exactly that right now. And when they've got the wealth and that whole, World War II baby generation has the bulk of U.S. wealth, 60%, 70% of it, you definitely want to relate to them. But I think the answer is, in the deal structure, you can create value. And part of the value is in the haggle and is in the deal structure. When I say deal structure, Tommy Ray's buying something, and he's buying it Tommy Ray and or signs. Or maybe he's doing a lease with option to buy, or with an option to sublease by the bedroom. And when you start to create value, because the issue is understanding how to create value in deal structure, and then how to ask for mentors. I would encourage everybody to have a mentor in the core competency they want to target to develop. At some point, the mentor that's available and proximal to you, you will exhaust. You will always be respectful. You always give and you'll get, and you'll build a relationship that should last you his life, your life, or both your all's lives, right? But
Yes.
you approach society as it was meant to be, with a natural give and get the entire time. There's old phrases that we don't say enough, like it takes a village to raise a child. I'm here to tell you it takes a village to build stability and prosperity for the children. And when we can't agree probably by purposeful design of the big picture, when we can't agree on stuff because we're not focused on our common interests. And our common interests are economic development, growth, common understanding, which basic training helps us get through that. But we have to push to these younger guys reading, mentorships, and like, hey, go read Rich Dad Poor Dad, go read Creating Wealth, go read Millionaire Next Door. And I'll start to challenge some of your paradigms with just that very short commander's reading list. And if we can push through that, then know the channel, and you should push everybody that you bring in a podcast. You should push an open door policy. You ever see a commander that had an open door policy? I think you all should push an open door policy. I think when you can force information to the center and people can choose to participate or not, but you're always telling the story. And people can jump on the train. It's not a train of exclusion. It's a train of your own fear excludes you. But that's okay. It's always coming around.
I agree. That touches on one of your principles, which I love, which is called social concierge. I think that networking and getting people around other like-minded individuals, whether you're military or civilian, is a huge resource. And when you're able to get into those environments and ask the right questions and build those relationships, amazing things can happen, which is why I'll put all of our links, I'll put all of our information down in the show notes. Feel free to click on those links. Tommy will get your contact information. I do, at the end of this podcast, at the end of our episode, I do want to give you an opportunity to share your website, your platforms, the companies that you've developed, because I want people to know how to reach you specifically and reach you directly, because you were the one that taught us about social concierge, and that, which is just an amazing concept. It's something that has been done forever and ever, but it's more purposeful when you are deliberately linking in folks, you are deliberately walking people to shaking hands with other folks that need to be in their sphere of influence. And so as
people to understand the problem, to understand the stakeholders, and then you could refine your SWOT, and then you could basically apportion and allocate the give and the take. When you have responsibility, and then you're going to solve problems because you're going to belly up to the responsibility, you're going to create a lot of value. But how do you divide that equity, that value, that cash flow? You do it by grabbing responsibility, reasonably balanced with control. It should be proportional, and then taking it to money because you solved the problem and you created the fix. Hopefully you can do it systemically over many portfolios, many areas, many times.
Absolutely. There's no one better at doing that with the military than Amber. Do you have something, Amber?
Yeah, first of all, I want to ask this question, Tommy. Will you be my mentor? I want to make it formal.
Always. For the rest of my existence, I will always help people. Until I fall over dead and probably shit myself.
Right.
But I'm going to help till the
I got
end.
this on recording. I got it.
Cheers to that then.
And then another question for you, as you talk about the successes that you had while you were enlisted and then you became an officer in the Air Force, a lot of times we don't talk about failures. I think we don't talk about the failures of the journey enough. And what a lot of people are afraid of are the failures. And they don't realize that a lot of times those failures will lead to success through the learning of that, through the people that you meet through that, perhaps. So as you were going through your journey when you were active duty, did you have any failures that led you to successes? And can you expand on those?
There's always failures, but you don't focus on where you're building quality and grit. I think really the key side discussion you have to have is grit. And when you go through pipelines, like we've been through some training pipelines that ensured you had a certain degree of grit and intestinal fortitude, or you wouldn't continue playing in the service or that thing that you were doing, right? Your greatest challenge, I'll talk very general to what you just said. Your greatest challenge is humans, and your greatest opportunity is humans. You'll be judged on the body of your work. I hope that resonates.
I think so. Definitely resonates with me. But going back to, I like to put myself in other people's shoes. One of the things I think we've covered a lot of broad topics, but now I want to kind of I like to be a little bit more granular because in the Army, I was a chief warrant officer. I was all about systems. And those systems, I think when it comes to, our personal real estate journey, we spent months while we were in Hawaii before we even moved to San Antonio, scouring the websites, scouring Zillow, scouring Redfin, reaching out to people. We personally reached out to several different podcasters, and we like I want to be able to craft, like, for some people like me, I'm a dumb Army guy, right? I like to clearly define what is step one. If I were to, create a paper for future soldiers and or civilians who want to get into real estate investing, I think we've kind of already touched on it, but can you clearly define what would be step one, and how does that relate to what you did earlier?
Understand the point of origin. So,
Okay.
when you navigate, you have to have a point of origin, right? You have to
Correct.
have this is where I'm at, this is my coordinate, this is my elevation, this is where I'm at, right? You are the point of origin. I'm an Anagram 1, I'm an ESTJ, and I have goals and dreams and wants. And there's things that are needs that you write, and then there's things that are wants that you write. And then you also look at your sphere of influence, your kids, if you're married, all that stuff. And you emphasize the ones that have commonality and synergy to benefit them as well. And then you curate a rack and stack. So you self-assess, develop a plan, and you do it long term. And here's the one thing I didn't do. I only had a 20-year plan. I didn't plan for massive success. So when I overran all my goals, hey, I want to have my jump wings. I want a bachelor's degree. I want to be a millionaire by the time I retire from the military. I want to be a chief master sergeant or an officer. By the time I was 40 and overran all my goals, I went through about a year there, 2 years there, where I was like lost in the sauce because I didn't plan for massive success. And then when I'm sitting around at the pool at Forest Ridge over here at 3009 and I-35, and all the pilot wives are looking at me as a stay-at-home dad, and they're like, why is your wife working? Why are you here? It's weird. When society expects at 40, you're not retired. You should be out there, continue working. And there is a form of discrimination. So step one, self-assess, create a 30, 50-year plan for massive success, and then do a social balance sheet. You know what a social balance sheet is? You list your skills. Here's my skills. Here's my knowledge. Here's my attitude. Here's my ability. I've got 5,000 friends on LinkedIn and this in Facebook and this in Instagram. I'm really good with graphics. I got a 4-year business degree. You sort of listed a lot of my stuff up there earlier. And you figure out how best to harvest all that in your market campaign. Back in our day, we didn't have social media. We didn't have this ultimate force multiplier lens, which is this right here, right now. If
Exactly.
you have the ability to force multiply, let alone add a GoFundMe to it, let alone make it a 501c, then your ability to organize, train, and equip, and then harvest to that down market moment post-hurricane, or the down market moment economically, it looks like an economic hurricane. If you can combine all that and be a true contrarian investor across asset classes, this is the key thing. When you have small lenders, small banks that are privately owned, they have unusual lending flexibility. So when you're able to take stocks, like when COVID hit, I stopped buying real estate. I threw a bunch of stuff in ESRT, Empire State Realty Trust, because New York City, New York was hit. So I bought pieces and parts of the Empire State Building. And when you're buying it at $4, but then you're selling it shortly thereafter at $9, in that small snapshot of time, that's a big deal. I was buying Ford in the high fours, because the market had just hit that seizure. So you surf over to a different asset class and you play that short. It was a short-term capital gain, less than a year, short-term capital gain. But you learn to combine the tools. Janus Fund back in '94 issued a certificate, used an F&M Bank in Clarksville, Tennessee, and pledged a certificate. And then you still get the dividends, appreciation, and capital gains of the shares that are frozen in the 727 shares I had in Janus Fund to buy the below market value sweet real estate deals that are cash flowing. You learn to stack and blend asset classes and surf economic cycles, both on the buy here, But when the financing, refinance here. So you, in the financing structure or in the value structure, you're buying here and you're selling it here, or you're owner financing it here, and then you're becoming the bank as your owner finance. So as you do those things, you have an operational tempo, but you need to know that's why you're looking for the banks, and that'll shape the questions you're asking them. Will you let me cross collateralize? Will you let me leverage in this manner? Will you let me lend? Will you let me lend against my notes, the owner finance notes owed me? And then once you figure out all the tools you have, now you know what you're bringing to the line of departure. Now you know what you have to plan with in the combat ops planning cell as you're building a campaign to invest in a down market, let alone the deal structure, let alone the highest and best use Airbnb, or become the bank just selling things with notes. And as you get older, you probably want to be more in the notes and you want to be less in the active rental management, let alone Airbnb management. That can be exhausting.
Absolutely. Maybe you had something?
Yeah. Just appreciate all this super high. It's obvious that you have a lot in your mind and a lot of
Yes.
wisdom to give. I'm sure we could keep this going for about 17 hours and ask you every question in the world. But we don't want to overstimulate people, right? We want to keep this to a manageable, TikTok level as the new generation does, right? Shorter clips. So I think we maybe do one more question. And to me, that is, in this current market, there's a lot of talk out there. There's a lot of, news out there about how bad the market is, how high the interest rates are, and how scared people are to jump into the real estate market. So what advice would you give to those people? And what do you think, as like a new soldier just coming into the Army or the Air Force, what can they do right now in this market to take advantage of things and still come out in the positive?
I think tracking mainstream media and listening to what's being said and looking for the trending, and then sometimes doing the exact opposite of what they suggest, is the best way to get concierge to the ideal strategy. When people say it's an awful market, and I'm seeing people sell homes subject to their 3.25% 30-year mortgage, I'm glad that they heard that media broadcast that encouraged them to sell that note that's got 27 years left on it at 3.25 when we have a real rate of inflation 7%. I'm more than okay with taking it over subject to getting basically a return on the note because I'm paying back with inflated dollars, and then taking it and renting it out by the bedroom or whatever. I think real estate is a life raft. And think of the USS Indianapolis sunk at the end of World War II, and everybody's trying to jump on a life raft, or the Titanic. And the sea is awash with inflation. And I think when we can all jump on a life raft of hard assets at 3.25 or 3% and have it pay for itself, because the creative way we're leasing it, Airbnbs, room for rents, classic rentals, I think inflation's going to work for us, not work against us. And I think fear is best internalized by others. If we're going to operate in any domain, whether it's warfare or economic warfare, fear doesn't do us any good because it tends to impede action. And I guarantee if you hold ground too long, you won't be around very long. You have to move. One way or the other, you have to move. So that is important. You have to move in development. You have to move in your investing. You have to move towards your goals. Body at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force.
I love that quote.
And that's why we're here.
I think exactly. And one of the things that I hold near and dear to my heart is you're absolutely right. Contrarian investing is one of the strategies that you can use to create wealth if you're looking to do active real estate investing. And Warren Buffett, I think, said it best. He said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." And you can create opportunities. I love that by contrarian investing, you are actively creating opportunities to build wealth. And I think that's huge. So Amber touched on it a second ago. I think with the new TikTok trends and the shorter videos and things like that, I do want to give folks an opportunity. So if folks see this episode and they want to reach out, they can obviously go check out the show notes. They can like this video. They can subscribe to us because we're going to have tons more content coming online over the next few years. We're going to run this as absolutely far as we can. And what I love about YouTube and all these other streaming software platforms is that we can provide a greater degree of that social concierge. By you being a guest on here, we can reach a greater audience. So if you could take a moment to let people know what you have going on, what you're trying to do in the future, and how they can reach out to you directly.
The quickest, easiest way to reach out to me directly is you could just text. I'm a very approachable kind of guy. 210-419-8018. Come with your name and what you want to know, and we'll see what's doable. Email's TommyRay66 at Yahoo. I'm rebuilding the website. It's at sarealestateinvesting.com, but it's going to go through a rebuild, so don't approach from that angle just yet. And what we're doing is we're organized, training, equip. And I'm doing it with my kids and kids I've basically adopted. We're teaching them entrepreneurism. This week, I'm going to firm up a contract on an industrial building south of Lawton to build hopefully tiny homes, cottages, and container homes. And then I've also got 37 acres locked down in Cache, Oklahoma that we're going to develop. But I'm focused on my kids at this point. I'm super minimalistic. I wear flip-flops and swimming trunks and T-shirts, and I just don't give a fuck. So it's not about toys. Amen. It's not about stuff. It's about capabilities, And when I'm very minimalistic, So to be very minimalistic, I feel like I'm a slick bomb with no drag, no inflatable fins that pop out to slow it down. I'm just a slick bomb off the wing. And I encourage people to be that. That's why that book, Millionaire Next Door by Stanley and Danko, is so relevant. And I hope this forum, and I hope others like us, that we devote ourselves to building the village, and the village is called America. America is this country, and we add back. As everybody else is turning it to shit, let's add back. And let's help veterans from the front end of their career, before they're even at the MEP station, to the back end of their career, and create true belonging in our community to head off veteran suicides and just add capital. We're very force blended by the mission, by the nature of everything. Let's take advantage of that, and let's share an understanding, and let's crucify each other with Q&As just like this in other forums. Let's become an affiliate podcast to other people, and let's challenge the common think. And if we challenge it and there's enough truth that resonates with people, maybe we'll reculturize America to some degree, And that's what I'm down for.
That's certainly the hope.
That or a fist fight party.
Yeah. I'm always down for a good fist fight. Hey.
She's not looking on approvingly.
Yeah. I mean, that's how stuff gets handled, right? And Mike Tyson said it best. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes, sir. I love it.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty much gotten to the end of this podcast, or I'm sorry, this episode. If you do like this video, please click that like button. If you want to subscribe to us to follow along on this particular journey, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to come up with a lot of new content. And again, check out the show notes for more information. And until then, we will talk to you all later.
Here's to your investing success. Good luck, guys.